At this hour, as you can see, there are small clusters of people gathered around small transistor radios trying to find out what is the latest regarding the reported shooting of the president. According to the information that we have at this hour, the attempted assassination took place at Elm and Houston Street as the president's party was preparing to go under the triple overpass and come out here to the Trade Mart. At this time, the announcement has not been made to the several thousand who are here in the Trade Mart as to what has happened. Details are still sketchy. The only thing that we have at this time is the report that the president is at Parkland Hospital, that Governor John Connally was also wounded, and that a Secret Service agent was killed. According to the best reports that we have at this time, there were only 3 shots fired, and apparently all of them struck true. The group of men clustered down around the speaker's podium now, some of the business leaders of Dallas and the Southwest, apparently just hearing the word that this has happened. There's Julius Sheps. Just behind him and a bit to the left, banker W.W. Overton Jr. and several others. There is nothing official as this is being videotaped here at the Trade Mart, but the word is that the president has been shot. What his condition is, we do not know. The head table, as you can see, is empty. The presidential party was due here at the Trade Mart about half an hour ago at 12:30. Apparently, the attempted assassination took place just about that time. The report was that at around 12:30, the presidential caravan was still in the downtown area. The word is rapidly spreading now through the market, through the Trade Mart here, and several people are beginning to get up and leave their seats. This was to have been another stop on the presidential tour of Texas, a trip that had been called non-political by the White House, although there were certainly some political overtones, and a big banquet scheduled for tonight, a fundraising affair in Austin. No report as yet as to the condition of the president. No report as yet as to whether or not the assassin was apprehended. Do we have a word on that, Dick?
No, there was just one report that a man and a woman were on a ledge of the building at the supposed scene. No details on it as yet. But
no details at all as to what actually happened. Reporters, of course, are at the scene right now, and we will have something forthcoming before too long. Now, here is an announcement from the podium. Making the announcement will be J. Eric Johnson, the president of the Dallas Citizens Council, one of the sponsoring groups. Here is Mr. Johnson.
Can I have your attention, please? There has been delay in the arrival motorcade. There has been a real error. We do not know the extent of it or the exact nature. We believe from the report we have just received that it is not serious. We hope you will keep your seats. As soon as we have something to tell you, believe me, we'll do it.
That was the president of the Dallas Citizens Council, the all-powerful civic group here that was sponsoring this luncheon for the president. He said, in effect, that the report is that the president has been wounded. However, they do not know how seriously. We had an earlier report a few minutes ago that we passed on to you that there was the report that a Secret Service guard had been killed and that Governor Connally was also wounded in the assassination attempt. It took place at the Houston Street underpass just prior to the motorcade entering the Stemmons Freeway for the trip out here to the Trade Mart. Are we live now? The audience, comprised of many civic and business leaders here, not only in Dallas and Fort Worth, but throughout the North Texas area, are, of course, stunned by the announcement that was made a moment ago by Mr. Johnson, confirming what had been learned earlier, that an attempt was made on the president's life. At this time, no word from Parkland Hospital, where the president was taken, as to his condition or the condition of Governor John Connally, who is riding in the open convertible with the president. It is ironic in a way that the weather cleared off here as it did today. Earlier forecasts had called for the possibility of rain throughout the presidential visit. And it was only shortly prior to his jet touching down out at Love Field that the weather did break through, and the clouds went away, and the sunshine, of course, made it possible for the president to ride in an open convertible rather than the plexiglass top that would have been used, of course, had the weather been inclement. Nothing further as to the condition. The safety precautions that were taken here at the Trade Mart, certainly among some of the most extensive that have ever been taken for the visit of anyone to this city. And as of this hour, it, of course, is all for naught due to the fact that there was an attempt made on the president's life. There had been earlier speculation that perhaps if there was any trouble, it would have come at the airport where the president, if you were watching television and listening to the radio earlier this morning, you heard that he went up to the fence, went up to the crowd, and was mixing quite closely with many of those who had come out to see him. He shook hands with many supporters. There were some signs in the crowd that were anti-administration. But for the most part, there was an air of congeniality on the part of the crowd. This Trade Mart is approximately 1.25 miles from the point where the attempted assassination took place. The Trade Mart, this huge market hall, is located just to the northwest of the downtown business area. The president's motorcade had taken him from the airport down Lemon Avenue, one of the familiar thoroughfares here in Dallas, to Turtle Creek, down past the Democratic County headquarters, and on into the downtown area. The procession came up Main Street, one of the three principal thoroughfares in downtown Dallas, and as it was just beginning to leave the downtown area and come out here to this hall when the attempted assassination took place. The announcement was made to the crowd just a few minutes ago as to what had transpired. No report on the condition of the president as yet. Yes, Dick, do you have something?
There is an unconfirmed report, Eddie, that the president is in critical condition, that Governor Connally has gone to the operating room. This is an unconfirmed report.
That the president is in critical condition and that Governor Connally is now in the operating room. And also the fact that one of the Secret Service agents who was riding with the president was killed. Is that correct?
That is the report at this moment.
Dick, has there been any report as to whether or not the assassin was apprehended?
Nothing on the apprehension as yet. We still have that same street corner that you mentioned to go by. That's all so far.
Nothing other than the fact that at the intersection of Elm and Houston Streets, just west of the downtown area, is where the attempted assassination took place. There is a look of shocked disbelief on this crowd that has turned out for the president. Safety precautions here probably have never been greater. It was only a couple of weeks ago that an incident occurred here that caused some to think that it would have been better had President Kennedy not gone ahead with his announced plans of coming to Dallas. That was when the United Nations Ambassador Adlai Stevenson made a speech at the Memorial Theater in Dallas. You may recall that at that time there was quite a rhubarb inside the theater proper as Mr. Stevenson tried to speak. One man, a Frank McGehee, who is the leader of the National Indignation Convention, a group of extreme rightists here, tried to interrupt the ambassador, he was ejected from the hall. Then later, when Mr. Stevenson left the hall and tried to go to his car, he stepped away from his police protection for a minute and into the arms of a very hostile crowd. A woman hit him with a placard, and he was also spat upon by a 23-year-old Dallasite. This caused, of course, the fact that the precautions for the presidential visit went to extremes that have not been known here before. The report is that the attempted assassins, we now hear it was a man and a woman who fired the shots, were on the ledge of a building near the Houston Street underpass. Just from memory, that would have to be a building, well, let's see, it could conceivably be either the county records building, the county courthouse. There is a building there, as my memory serves me, about an 8-story building, which houses a book depository, and then also the Union Terminal building is located just to the left or to the south of where the attempted assassination took place. There are very few people who are going on with their meal here. There are tears in the eyes of several of them. Down around one of the tables in the center of the room, all of the civic and business leaders of Dallas are gathered, trying to find out some word as to whether or not the president's... yes. Just a minute. Now, here's an announcement from the platform. Mr. Eric Johnson with an announcement.
I'm not sure that I can say what I have to say. I feel a little bit like Southern Pearl Harbor. It is true that our President, Governor Connolly, and the motorcade have been shot. We do not know how seriously. Our reports are scant. They are difficult to get. We shall tell you as much as we know, as soon as we know anything. Thank you.
May we all stand for a moment?
This is the head of the Dallas Council of Churches, the Reverend Luther Holcomb.
In each of our hearts to bow our heads in the presence of Almighty God, when each in our own way would come to Him. Let us pray. Oh God, none of us can find words to express the deepest feelings of our hearts. We realize that this is a time of mourning, and yet we will each come relying upon the faith that we possess. We would each come with perhaps the most earnest prayer that we ever offer in behalf of our President, our government, the members of their families. So we pray that even in this gathering, that we may reveal that promise that shall be pleasing to Thee, and that we shall await word in a spirit of prayer. In Thy holy name, amen.
That was the Reverend Luther Holcomb, who is the Executive Secretary of the Dallas Council of Churches, and who was to have given the invocation here for the President's address today. As you can imagine, there are many stories that are coming in now as to the actual condition of the president. One is that he is dead. This cannot be confirmed. Another is that Governor Connolly is in the operating room. This we have not confirmed. Another is, and apparently this is correct, that one of the Secret Service agents whose job it was to guard the life of the president was killed in his line of duty. The president was whisked from the scene of the attempted assassination or assassination, depending upon his condition, of course, at this hour, by bus to Parkland Hospital, which is located about 1.5 miles from this site, which would make it about 3 miles from the site of the shooting. It is a city-county hospital here, and the president undoubtedly is in the emergency room at that hospital, which would be on the first floor of Parkland. No word is yet. We are awaiting something more official. It is, of course, difficult, certainly, to go on scanty reports of something like this. This is the first time that the life of a president has been taken, or possibly taken, in some time. Am I too close? Of course, the time in the House of Representatives when the Congress was shot up for a while. As my memory serves me, I think there have been 3 assassinations in the history of presidents. President Lincoln, of course, President Garfield, and President McKinley, the 3 who have died by the hand of an assassin while in office. The crowd now beginning to get up and leave, most of them, of course, unsure, as we are at this time, as to just what has happened. The president came to Dallas in his campaign of 1960. It's ironic, too, that Mr. Nixon, who was a visitor in this city yesterday and who at that time was, of course, the Republican standard bearer, was in town just a couple of days before President Kennedy then. They were both campaigning. And now, ironic again that the President of the United States should be here, and his counterpart in the primaries, or in the election of a couple of years ago, left the airport from which Mr. Kennedy arrived just about an hour earlier. Dick, do you have something late?
Just bits and pieces. A 25-year-old man, whose identity is unknown, has been taken into custody and taken to the sheriff's office for questioning. The school bus depository at Elman Field, the building is surrounded by armed men. They are searching.
Is that where the shot came from?
Yes, apparently so.
That's what we were surmising.
And 2 priests have gone to Parkland Hospital to Kennedy's
What
room.
about Mrs. Kennedy?
No word at all on Mrs. Kennedy.
Where is she? Do you know?
No, I'll attempt to find out right away.
All right, now who do we... yes, we have 3 men at Parkland, and they will be getting word to us just momentarily. 2 priests having gone to the hospital. Mr. Kennedy, of course, being the first president of the Catholic faith to serve this nation. He was to have dined on steak here today, as were the other 2,500 who had come to the hall. For the president and for other Catholics who were in attendance today, special dispensation had been granted for the serving of meat on Friday, a day normally reserved for fish for those of the Catholic faith. The crowd's beginning to move away now, and it is sort of, as we look up now on the speaker's platform, I noticed that within the past 45 minutes, I had not seen this earlier, that a special chair had been brought in for Mr. Kennedy. That black leather chair that is seated just a couple of spaces away from the podium. That was the chair that President Kennedy was to have occupied. And as we say at this hour, it is not known just what his condition is. As Dick Wheeler mentioned a moment ago, the shots apparently came from the Texas School Depository, School Book Depository, which is a building about 8 floors in height that, yes. And who are you, sir?
I don't want to be identified.
We have just been told by a member of the staff at Parkland Hospital the president is dead. This is not. What is the governor's condition?
He's been shot in the chest.
In the chest. Do you have any report on that?
Don't know.
Thank you, sir. This is the report of a doctor who is on the staff of Parkland Hospital who was here for the luncheon. He says that the president is dead. We do not have a confirmation on this. We only pass it along as the word of a man who we would take to be a good source at this time. Governor Connolly shot in the chest. He is in the operating room. We do not know what his condition is. But the report is that the president is dead. This is not confirmed. This is something that, this is something that the word just came to us a minute ago. The word we have is that President Kennedy is dead. This we do not know for a fact. The word we have is that he is dead, that he was shot by an assassin at the intersection of Elm and Houston Streets just as he was going into the underpass. The word we have is from a doctor on the staff of Parkland Hospital who says that it is true. He was in tears when he told me just a moment ago. This is still not officially confirmed, but as I say, the source would normally be a good one. President Kennedy on his second visit to Texas. The first time he came here, actually the third time. I remember he came here when he was a senator from Massachusetts a few years ago, and I recall the time he came into the airport here, and there was no one on hand to meet him. He was not as well known then as he is now, and an airline's public relations man took him into town. He was here to address a convention, and no one was on hand to greet him. So the president rode in with a PR man from an airline. The next time he came, he was the standard bearer of the Democratic Party. That was in 1960. The crowds turned out for him then. This is, of course, an area where there has been a tremendous amount of dissension in the ranks of the Democratic Party. It is an area where there has been, of course, a tremendous amount of feuding on the part of a group that considers itself to be the extreme right wing. As to the visit this time, after Adlai Stevenson, our ambassador to the United Nations, ran into problems, he was spat upon by one man, he was hit in the head with a placard by a lady. The talk was that the president should not make this trip. However, it was decided that the security precautions were such that he could make it without any problems. And now, the word that we have is that the President of the United States is dead. Dead at the hands of an assassin's bullet. The word is that it was a 25-year-old man that he shot from a window in a building that I can best describe as being a factory loft. It houses school books near the edge of the downtown Dallas area. It's just across the street, catty-cornered from the county jail, ironically enough. The shots apparently were fired as the motorcade started to go under the triple underpass. If you have been in Dallas, you may be familiar with the triple underpass. It's where three of the main streets come together at the west end of the business district, and there funnel under the railroad tracks that feed into the Union Terminal. The motorcade was to have gone from there on to this Trade Mart where we are now. Trade Mart that is fast emptying of people, little clusters crowded around. Most of these people are the civic and business leaders of the community. The man who made the announcement a moment ago that the president had been shot. Well, now, here is Luther Holcomb, the Dallas Council of Churches executive secretary at the podium. Here is Dr. Holcomb. His microphones have apparently not been turned on. The word that we have is that the president is dead. Perhaps this is official now, and this is the word that will come from Reverend Holcomb. He gets to the podium. He's at the podium when he gets an opportunity to speak. Also joining us now. It is official. The President of the United States has been assassinated in Dallas, Texas. He fell victim of an assassin's bullet just as his motorcade went to go into the underpass just west of the downtown area that would lead him to this site that had been prepared for his luncheon. Now to the podium.
We do want to commend the spirit that has prevailed as each of you is visiting one with another. But as we conclude this meeting, as I have said before, we're all stunned, we're speechless. I do want to ask Dr. William H. Dickinson, Jr., longtime servant of God, pastor of the Highland Park Methodist Church, to say just a word and then to pronounce the benediction.
There are no words to express what we're feeling. We are all conscious of the fact that we face an issue and some responsibilities as citizens today which we cannot face without the strength and the wisdom and the patience of our God. Will you bow your heads? Draw near us, O God, and sustain us with thy presence, and grant unto us wisdom, strength, courage, to live in keeping with thy law, and to live as free men. Amen.
Dr. Dickinson, the pastor of one of the largest Methodist congregations in the world. The word was not given to the crowd, but we understand that the president is dead. This we do not have an absolute confirmation on, but this is the word that we have. As we said a few minutes ago, he apparently died in the operating room at Parkland Hospital, which is the city-county emergency hospital here, located about 1.5 miles from this building. The president and his party have been in Texas now since yesterday. They arrived in San Antonio, then to Houston, then to Fort Worth last night. He walked into a big crowd of some 6,000 to 8,000 this morning in a parking lot in downtown Fort Worth. The fears here were that had the president had a problem in Dallas, it would have been at the airport upon his arrival. But nothing went wrong there. There were some pickets, there were some demonstrators, but the president, in his charming manner, moved into the crowd with his wife by his side and greeted and shook hands for, quite some time there at the airport. Then, and again, we go back to this business of here, we have been forecasting rain in Dallas for the last couple of days, and this morning was one of those dreary mornings. There was fog, there was rain, the clouds hung low, and the weathermen had the forecast that this would hold through this afternoon. But then as the morning wore on, the clouds broke away, and when the president's big jet set down right on schedule at 25 minutes before the noon hour Central Time, the sun was bright, the crowds were out, the bubble plexiglass cover for the president's limousine was put away, and the president and his wife and the governor of the state of Texas rode in the open car. All went well past the airport, down Mockingbird Lane to Lemon, down Lemon Avenue to Turtle Creek on into Cedar Springs down to Harwood, the crowds out to see the president, then down to Main Street, up Main, and just as the presidential motorcade started to enter the triple underpass at Houston Street, shots rang out. The president, as we have it now, mortally wounded. The governor of Texas, John Connally, who served as Secretary of the Navy in Mr. Kennedy's cabinet when Mr. Kennedy first assumed the high office, is wounded. He was shot in the chest. A Secret Service agent whose job it was, as with his others, fellow agents, to guard the life of the president, killed instantly. 3 shots fired and 3 people hit. The president apparently dead. The governor of Texas wounded, we don't know how seriously, a Secret Service agent killed on the spot. This is not confirmed, the death of the president. We have it on what would normally be good authority. But until the word officially comes, there is no way to know. The crowds have emptied now, and this big market hall that was to have been the site of a festive day for the president and for his wife and the vice president and his wife and the governor and his wife and the many Texas congressmen, now being emptied and most of the meals left untouched. There had been a rhubarb here for a couple of weeks over who would sit at the head table. And finally, at the last minute, a protocol expert was called in, and the head table seating arrangement became final as of this morning. Rift has existed for a long time in the Democratic Party in Texas, and this rift, the Democrats will tell you, whether they be conservatives or loyalists or liberals or moderates or whatever faction of the Democratic Party they belong to in Texas, they all say that this is just an inter-party fight and we can all get together when the president comes to town. Well, finally they did get together. The big bone of contention had been whether or not Senator Ralph Yarborough, who is considered certainly in the liberal wing of the party, would be seated at the head table. He does not get along too well with Vice President Johnson or with Governor Connolly. The word was that last night the senator refused to ride in the motorcade in the same car with Vice President Johnson. But today, all was to have been pretty much peaches and cream, as it were. They were all going to sit at the head table and break bread together on this Friday, the 22nd of November. And then, before they could ever reach this market hall, the word is that the president has been killed, that one of his agents is dead, and the governor of Texas is wounded. From the Trade Mart in Dallas, Texas, this is Eddie Barker.